Well, without further ado, we'd like to welcome you to Build a Water Trail, Realizing Your Community River as an Economic Asset. And today's session will be led by Gwyneth Moody from the Georgia River Network. So Gwyneth, if you would like to say a few words about yourself or go ahead and start your presentation.
All right, and should I, just a technical thing, if I have a PowerPoint, do I share my screen? Because right now I was trying to share and it won't let me, so I just want to make sure.
We have to, let me go ahead and.
Yeah, so hi, and I'm really excited to be here. I have been with Georgia River Network for the last 8 years, specifically to jumpstart and get the communities around the state really excited about the rivers that they have in their backyards. And oftentimes that maybe they don't even realize they have in their backyards. And so the idea is to really celebrate these rivers rather than just using them as a source to discharge and or use for industrial uses. We want to have clean rivers to recreate in. So this kind of will break down the basic elements of how to build a water trail in your community, or at least get started. So I'm going to go ahead and get my PowerPoint going. So bear with me while I just share this screen really quickly, and then I'm going to go to my full screen mode. There we go. Awesome. All right, so for those of you guys who know me, who have seen me speak before on water trails, you may have seen parts of this presentation before. I thought about changing this photo, but I love this photo. It's just so awesome. I was paddling with these girls. They were having the best time ever, and she just decided to stand up and just be like, yes, I love this. So it was just really a special moment. So I always like to share that. So to get started, I'd like to just give an overview of the Georgia Water Trail Network in the state. And to clarify, there currently is not a statewide water trail program in Georgia that is managed by a state agency. So right now, the nonprofit Georgia River Network is in charge of managing these water trails and working with communities to build. And as you can see, there are a number of established water trails as well as those that are developing. And before I go any further, I just always want to clarify and make sure that everyone is clear on what a water trail is, because there's oftentimes confusion when people think of a trail along the water, which may be a greenway or some other type land trail, but this is actually a water trail. So it's the trail is the water itself. And so our goal is to provide access, public access to the public so that they can access this resource safely. And you can see with the established water trails, we've got about 19 of those and then 16 developing, and I'll go into the details of what it means to be established versus developing. But I just always like to give people a map to kind of figure out where am I in the state, and is there a developing or established water trail near me? And if not, then great idea if it's a navigable river to go ahead and get started on building one. Here is a list of all these water trails that were just on the map. So you may recognize some of these rivers that are in your communities. So also be aware that we do have a water trails website, gawatertrails.org, and this information is also on that website. So if I breeze through, you can always go to the website and poke around and find this information. So to get down to what is the difference between this established and developing water trail? So if a community, a stakeholder group, fulfills these criteria, Georgia River Network will give them the blessing and officially designate them as an established water trail, and then we will put them on our clearinghouse and promote them. So the main and most important thing is to have a trail that is sponsored and maintained by a local entity or partnership. So the reason behind that is oftentimes you might have a leader in the community that is really gung-ho and wants to get this trail off the ground, but then they move on to other things. And so this initiative is kind of left without any backing or anyone to take over. And so safety issue, because oftentimes you could have issues with launches being dilapidated because they're not kept up, and or there's not someone to call if they have questions about the water trail. So that representative, that partnership group, that sustainable group is really important moving forward. Obviously, public access is very key, where they can unload your boat, park your vehicle safely, and not, be trespassing or jumping over guardrails or down riprap. We want people to comfortably able to access the water. We also want to make sure that the access points are appropriately spaced apart so that people are not stuck out on the river for miles and miles and miles with nowhere to get out, because that encourages trespassing. And we are very in tune and respectful of private property rights. And so we're doing everything that we can to increase the access so that people have a comfortable distance to paddle in a day. And just to kind of reiterate that, a comfortable paddle is about 2 to 3 hours. And overnight camping has become more and more popular. So if you do have a really long route that it's just really difficult to get more public access to, you can break that route up by having an overnight camping spot. And then the last thing, of course, is the, oops, my PowerPoint just went the wrong way. The last thing is, of course, to have information there at the site. That public information is really important. So maps, kiosks, any kind of interpretive signage, safety information that tells people what to expect when they're gonna get on the river, and then also having a website so that people can plan ahead and if when they're planning their trip. So there's lots of benefits to water trails. You guys probably know this, but I'll quickly kind of breeze through. The main part, of course, is, people getting out and recreating and really enjoying it. And that's kind of where we draw people into the river, where they learn to fall in love with the river, and then they want to protect it. And that's where the conservation piece comes in. And Adopt a Stream, where, you have community groups that go out, they want to test the water quality, they want to make sure it's a safe place. And so if you have more people in the river and recreating on it, they're going to be really concerned about that water being healthy. So that's a very key piece. And that goes along with education as well, and getting out with friends. And then there's the economic development piece, which is, of course, very key to a lot of community leaders who want to bring in tourism or other means to bring in a higher standard of living for their community. So, when you have more tourism, people are going to come and spend in the local area. The businesses that are there are going to thrive with people, going to restaurants and using the outfitters and staying over. If there's more people coming in, there's going to be more businesses that develop, especially outfitters. And then there's all kinds of different events that can celebrate the river. There's festivals, there's all kinds of paddling trips that people organize, cleanups, those kinds of things. And then all of this will benefit the local community with a higher quality of life and improved tax base. Here's just some figures on what people are spending in terms of outdoor recreation and water sports. These are big numbers. And, it's not something to laugh at. So, if you've got $11.3 billion being spent annually on canoeing and kayaking and rafting, there's definitely money to be made. So it's important to recognize these numbers when you're talking to your community leaders and trying to convince them of the importance and the economic potential for building a water trail, because these can be very convincing. As I mentioned, there's increased recreational opportunities. There's all kinds of things you can, of course, do on the river, and it's economical. So to build these trails, you're not laying down concrete on the river itself. You're just putting concrete down and or launches on access points along the river. So that's a lot less expensive. And then it's less land as well to buy and or put easements on. And a lot of times we work with public agencies, any kind of state parks or Department of Natural Resources, local parks. We work with them if they are along a river to put in their access, and that's sometimes easier than trying to purchase land from a private property owner. As I mentioned, it's a gateway to conservation. So once you fall in love with your river, you're going to want to protect it. And then, it really does allow this connectivity piece. And, over the years, I've realized rather than just trying to stay in these silos of different types of activities, instead, let's put together plans that incorporate these trails connecting with each other. And, having a strategic plan ahead so that you don't have to go back and put in access to a river after you've already built your greenway. It just makes sense when you're trying to plan ahead. So, like I mentioned, there's oftentimes different trails that connect, hiking trails, biking trails. A lot of times there's different points of interest that are along the trail as well that we like to highlight and make sure that people are aware of, so that when they're coming to visit a water trail, they have other things to do. There might be family members that don't really want to get out on the water, but there's other things that they can do to occupy their time. Here's some examples of water trails around the world. So where you have, this connectivity piece. So people are walking, they're paddling, they're biking, and they're really celebrating the river. They're recognizing that this is there and it's not something that they hide in their backyard. Here's some other examples. These are obviously very built up, but, definitely this is a phenomenon that is increasing in popularity around the world. So it's not just the United States that has water trails. You find them really all over, and they're growing more and more. So in order to have a successful water trail, you really do need to make sure that you're covering these benchmarks. And these are actually the same benchmarks that were put together by the National Water Trail System, which is part of the, basically the National Park Service, which is under the Department of Interior. They have a set of criteria that they require if a trail is to become designated as a national water trail. I'm not going to go into that. They've got some pretty stringent requirements for that, but they're very good benchmarks or principles to go by. So number one, public information. Maps. People love maps, and now more than ever, with everything being online, these maps are really important for people to plan their trips and to know where, different things that might be in their way, like obstacles, or if there's some kind of interesting thing along the way that they want to see. Also, directional signage is important. So when you're building a water trail, you want to make sure that you have adequate signage at each of the access points. And wayfind signage too, so that when people are driving down the road, they can see, oh, look, I just crossed a river and here's a water trail right here. And next time I pass, maybe I'll check it out. So that's really important. If there's any kind of obstacles or low head dams, we want to make sure that that's posted so that people know about it. And then of course your basic leave no trace, river etiquette principles are always important to post, and then that educational interpretive signage. Here's an example of a fact sheet that the Upper Oconee Water Trail stakeholder group put together. And this is just a way to educate the community about what a water trail is, the benefits, and some specifics about this trail itself. So this is a nice piece to put together if you're just, trying to get the word out about your community and gain support. Here's some examples of some websites that have been put together. So you can see they've got everything from trips to maps and photos, but there's a lot of different important pieces of information that you can include in your website to help people along. Here's some examples of maps that we made along with Northeast Georgia Regional Commission, and now we actually have our own mapping program where we're able to produce these maps at a fraction of the cost if you would have hired a normal GIS map designer. So we're trying to provide this resource, have some consistency among water trails, and making sure that the essential information is included on these maps. Brochures, very important. Most of these brochures do also fold out into large maps, and some of them are even waterproof. Here's some examples of kiosks. So you can see there's all different types. We have worked with the Department of Natural Resources to come up with a standard kiosk design, specifically that they recommend that they will use on their properties, but they recommend that other water trail stakeholder groups use those as well. And you can kind of see it's the standard right here on the bottom left, where it has the roof and then the little kiosk in the middle. Here's some examples of signage. We do have a pretty extensive signage or a pamphlet that basically helps you work with Department of Natural Resources, GDOT, the Georgia Department of Transportation, and your county or city governments in putting up these signs. So we have standards that we've worked with them. So we have templates, and then who to call in terms of fabrication. And so that you can make sure that you're reaching out to the right people and getting these signs put up. Here's some examples of safety and mile markers that are put out. Some stakeholder groups have mile markers and some don't really want them. You know, it just all kind of depends on preference, but obviously the rationale behind having these mile markers is for safety. And if somebody is stranded out on the river, they don't know where they are, they, you know, need to call support, they can tell the emergency responders exactly what mile they are or thereabouts, and that will help direct them to safety. So launches, there's all kinds of different launches, and there's not one set that makes sense for every site. You know, every site is different, different topography, different soil type, different velocity of river flow. So you really have to do your research when you're trying to determine what type or style of launch you want to build. We do support having as many access points as possible be handicap accessible. So there's some different examples of launches that do allow for that. You can see also there's boat slides that some launches have. You can see that right here. Here's some examples of the river etiquette that I went through before. I'm not going to read these, but again, you can see these on my website, georgiawatertrails.org. And it's just really important to make sure that, you know, you leave no trace when you're going out. And I would just also highlight to respect the other users of the river. You know, there's all kinds of different users. You want to avoid user conflict. Oftentimes, especially in South Georgia, you're going to have motorboaters, anglers, paddlers, swimmers, and they're all trying to use that same resource. So you've really got to be careful and mindful of your surroundings and, you know, being respectful. Community support. So there's all different types of stakeholders that we try to pull to the table when we're bringing together a group to build a trail. You know, definitely I've mentioned, you know, a lot of the land management agencies, but definitely private property owners, you know, along the river. That's really important to reach out to them and let them know that you're working on the project, because, you know, a lot of times NIMBYers can come into play that not in my backyard, and you want to make sure that you address any of their concerns, use some examples of other successful water trails, and have them as part of the team to help to grow this and to realize that this is a benefit to the whole community. Of course, it's always good to bring in local businesses, the hospitality industry, any kind of local economic tourism reps. You know, education is key. A lot of times we'll reach out to Boy Scouts and different civic groups to help out with projects and help volunteer for either maintenance or if they have cool educational activities that they would like to, you know, offer along the trail. It's always a good idea to bring in the educational component. Just going to keep going. So we did pass a statewide water trail resolution of support back in 2017. It basically just recognizes that these water trails exist in the state, and it encourages that they continue to develop and proliferate. So that was, it wasn't anything that had teeth, but it certainly was a blessing at the state level that made us want to continue our work full speed ahead. So that was a really exciting way of showing their support. Here's some governmental resolutions of support that have been passed by various municipalities. So we have a template that we use and provide to different groups that basically just allows their community to show that they support the work they're doing to help develop the trail. You can see there's about 38 different cities and counties that have passed resolutions of support, and we're hoping to continue to grow that list. Conservation and restoration, and then of course trail maintenance. So making sure to create these cooperative programs with watershed groups, you know, state, federal agencies, county. This is the stuff that Adopt a Stream does, the water quality testing, the river cleanups with Rivers Alive, or your, you know, sewage treatment facilities. They often do those. And also, like I said, you know, having different civic groups come and help maintain the trail is a great way to save on resources, and also get the word out to the community that this trail does exist. Safety is always important, and putting together a safety protocol of your, you know, your best way to exit the river, access routes for emergency responders, working with them closely, I think is really key as well. Here's some other educational activities. So, you know, curricula-based activities where you actually have classes that can go out and fulfill requirements on the water trail by either doing some kind of watershed-based activity and or, you know, flora, fauna, any of the sciences, is just a great way to get these kids out on school field trips and to see the trail in their backyard. I'll never forget when I was in, gosh, it was Panola area near Decatur, and I spoke for a group of freshman high school students there, and they had the South River that was only about probably a mile from their school, but all of them lived around there. And I asked the class if they could just raise their hand, you know, who knew that there was the South River just right down the road. And only about 10 people in a class of about, I'd say 40, actually knew that the river was there. And this just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that this amazing resource, the South River, which is in Metro Atlanta, these kids just didn't even know about it. So, you know, it really is something that is important to highlight in your community, and to make sure that the youth in particular are involved in developing the trail, because, you know, that's our future, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be protecting it and wanting to use it as well. So these are the different trails that I have provided technical assistance to in the past. So you can kind of see I'm currently working with the Upper Oconee Water Trail stakeholder group, as well as the Gilbert County Water Trails stakeholder group up in North Georgia. So we're making great progress. And so if you have any you know, desire to have intensive technical assistance, what that involves is basically Georgia River Network, me, will come to your community, and at this point probably it will be Zoom, and I work closely with the leadership in building a stakeholder group and walking you through the steps of how to build a water trail using past examples, you know, not reinventing the wheel, and just really kind of making sure that we're not leaving anything, overlooking anything, and being as thorough and sustainable as possible with our trail development into the future. There is a fee for service. Generally speaking, I either do a 6-month stretch or I'll do a 12-month, just depending on how far along the trail is. So please feel free, check out the website, and also you can contact me and ask questions. But I would love to help anyone who is interested in getting their trail off the ground in their community. One exciting thing that's coming up is we have a Georgia Water Trails app that I'm working very hard on right now. And I wanted to show just some examples of what that is going to look like. So I kind of just put some screenshots together here so you could get an idea, but I definitely wanted to highlight the part that was specific to kind of water quality and discharge. But just so you can see, this is kind of the first part of the app here, the front page. It'll have a map of the state of Georgia, and then you can tap on a different water trail and figure out what it is, the title, and then get more info. And if you can see here is where if I've tapped on the Chattahoochee River National Water Trail, this would pop up here, and it would give me all kinds of different information about that particular trail. And you can see here, I know it's kind of tiny, but the types of data that we'll be collecting and putting on the app for the different water trails include everything from access points, wildlife, outfitters, springs, points of interest, water gauges, hiking trailheads, rapids and shoals, camping, tributaries, water discharge, and I think that's all the ones I have there. But another feature that's really neat that we're going to have a little bit later on the second phase of the app is we'll have an option that's kind of like the Waze feature where you can report an obstacle. So if you're paddling down the river and you notice that there's a tree down, you can actually report that tree is down, and it will have a time, a length of time that it'll show as being down on the map until somebody takes it off. Or there's a certain amount of time where that'll just come off. So it's a cool way to be able to interact with the app and let other users know of obstacles. Also, as part of that is reporting any kind of spills. So if you're paddling along and you come across a potential pollution violation, then you can report that directly on the app, and we will be able to send that out to the appropriate EPD or EPA representative to address that. So very cool features of this app that I'm really excited about. You can also see here that we hone in on the launches. So in this example, there's Settles Bridge launch. If you tap it, it'll take you to the Settles Bridge, and I kind of scroll down here. So this is actually Settles Bridge, but if you scroll down on this page, you'll notice here that we do have a water quality part of it. And so we're just going to be taking the parameters of water temperature, dissolved oxygen, and pH, and then E. coli where there are those gauges. So, and then we've used the Georgia EPD water quality standards in our chart here below. And so this will be an instantaneous graph that you can look at, and you can compare what the state standards are with what the current readings are. And then you can toggle in between the different water quality standards up here. So it's a neat way to be able to kind of basically read this data, because a lot of it is really hard for just your average Joe to interpret. A lot of you guys are scientists, but we wanted to figure out a way that we could easily have these users understand what this data means. Not to say that they understand the science behind it, but they understand that if this number is between, if it's at a high risk level, then they need to be concerned. We're doing the same thing, of course, with your river flow conditions. So this is going to be your discharge cubic feet per second, and then your gauge height. And so we'll also pull in from USGS and be able to compare that information. So in this case, I'm hoping I have the right one up. So cubic feet per second, you can see this is the range for the different types of activities. And then you can see what the current range is right there. We also, of course, include important safety information. And so I think my thing just came off again. That's always key. You know, safety is always number one. And we want to make sure that that information is right at the fingertips of folks who are planning their trips, so they know if it's safe for them to bring their family out, or if they're, you know, river rats and they're hardcore kayakers, and they want to know, okay, is it raging? All right, I'm going out, I'm gonna do it. So, you know, for both extremes, we're trying to make sure that this information is readily available and easy to understand. So I think that's pretty much all I have. And I can go into detail with any of these topics that I've discussed. I didn't want to belabor anything because I don't really have any feedback from anybody right now. But I just wanted to, you know, give a quick overview and just, I guess, see if anybody has any questions.
Great, Gwyneth, if you wouldn't mind, we go ahead and stop sharing your screen, and then we can go ahead and get to the questions.
All righty, let me get my Zoom back up here. Zoom, where are you? Oh boy. Sorry. Oh. There it is. Perfect. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That was such an awesome talk, and I cannot wait to use that app. That sounds really awesome, and you know, a great way to get in touch with all the water trails in your area and get to know about them a little bit more. So, so once that's done, I'm definitely downloading it.
Yay! Awesome.
Well, it looks like we have a bunch of questions actually. So here we go. Tina, she's our award winner for the Beyond Borders. She said that she is concerned that no group is actually protecting the Tallapoosa River, and who maintains the Dub Denman Canoe Trail?
Okay, well, Gail Priest is kind of the main lead behind that project on the Tallapoosa, the Dub Denman Canoe Trail, and she has been a fighter and really has worked wonders. And so I would recommend that if there are issues with pollution or any other issues with the water trail, that she would be your best contact in that local area, and definitely bring it to her attention. You know, and the more attention that's brought to it, obviously, the more that the community can do to clean it up and make it a safer place to go and recreate.
Great.
Our next,
and if you need her, I was going to say, just sorry, if you go to our website, gawatertrails.org, you can look on the side panel on the right side, and it has the Dub Canoe Trail listed, and it has Gail's contact information there.
good to know. So our next question comes from Katie, and she wants to know, where did you get the data for your economic benefits slide?
So the outdoor industry puts together, you know, research, studies, does it every few years. So it's called the outdoor industry, and that's kind of the main go-to for getting some of this great data about outdoor recreation throughout the country.
Awesome. Tina has another question. She was wanting to know about trail markers. She said, we're having trouble getting mile markers put on the Terrapin Creek that Georgia-Alabama Land Trust has provided. We have had so much traffic this year, and accidents. Provide the outfitters with trash, onion bags, have a duck derby too, and we can.
So what was the question?
So I think she's saying that she was having trouble getting terrapin markers put on Terrapin Creek and wants to know a little bit more about trail markers.
Okay, so like mile markers, or are they terrapin markers as in like an interpretive wildlife? I'm not familiar.
Terrapin Creek was the name of the
So she's just saying terrapin markers as in like mile markers, I think.
Yes, I think Terrapin Creek's the name of the creek. So it's trail markers, like mile markers.
I would say, you know, first you need to talk to whoever is the kind of owner of the land on either side of the creek. If it's state owned or county owned, that, you know, will determine really, what the decision will be, and whether or not you can put mile markers. You know, like I mentioned, like some communities feel very strongly about having their mile markers for safety. But then there are others that don't like the extra signage on the river. They want to be out on the river and not have billboards or not have a sign, and or they get stolen. So there certainly are some drawbacks, and depending on, you know, what are the obstacles? Are there rapids? Are there things that, you know, are constantly causing people to have to trespass or you know, get out or need to know where they are? I think those are things that you need to factor into that decision. And if you have a really divided, you know, half the stakeholders want mile markers and half of them don't, you know, that's something that really you just have to kind of work it out amongst your community, because there's not really any. I would also recommend, if you wanted to use examples from water trails that currently are using mile markers, then that might be a good way to kind of show, like, look, they've got these mile markers, they're having success with this, you know, just to kind of let them know that it's something that's accepted in other areas. But yeah, definitely the property owners are going to make the ultimate decision of whether or not they want those in. But I would say probably, you know, either the county or who's the other? Yeah, county or city, I guess, would be the ones that would maybe help with paying for the fabrication of those mile markers if you do decide to do them. So hopefully that helps.
Great. Our next question comes from Anne, and she wanted to know how many rivers have overnight options?
Not a lot, unfortunately. Florida is like the master, man. They have just gone all out. They have these amazing, like, above ground screen platforms. The Suwannee is a great example of that. But I will say that the Etowah has put in recently some campsites, which is awesome. And those are like bona fide, like, river campsites. Another example that I'm super excited to be kind of part of is part of the app, actually, too, but the Trust for Public Land is putting in a camp and paddle trail on the Chattahoochee River National Water Trail. And that goes like right through, you know, Atlanta, at least the northern part of Atlanta. And so that will be a tremendous opportunity for people to be able to camp. I think there'll be 4 different campsites along a 48-mile stretch. So you can some of them you actually only can access by boat, which is kind of cool. But yeah, there's not a lot. And so, you know, as I work with communities, stakeholder groups, I encourage them to identify locations where this potential, you know, possibility of camping could take place. Another movement that started is with yurts and tree houses. So, you know, different communities are putting those in, which have been a big tourism draw, especially if you got a tree house overlooking the river. I mean, how cool is that, right? So those are some other ideas for lodging on rivers.
That's awesome. I see that a lot of you guys have put questions in the chat, and we will try to get to those. If you wouldn't mind putting them in the Q&A so that we can see them a little bit easier, that would be great. We have another question from Mary. She said, how do trail stewards interact with commercial boating and canoeing businesses that use the trails?
Wow, that's a big question. In all kinds of ways. You know, well, first of all, trail steward can also be all different types, right? So you can either be someone who's like adopt a stream, where you're going out and taking your water quality and being a steward in that way, or you could be picking up trash, or you could be building a water trail, and in that way you're a steward. But outfitters, you know, I'm biased, I guess, a little bit, because my father owns an outfitter, and that's how I grew up, was, you know, a river rat on the Broad River. You know, and it's a business, but it also allows people to access a river that they otherwise might not be able to. So, you know, it's providing a service. But I also, you know, there's definitely been user conflict with outfitters. You know, if there's folks that are, you know, using the turnaround area and blocking the public, or there's people that are going down the river that are being irresponsible, you know, and they're using the outfitters' boats, or throwing trash. So there is a balance. I think oftentimes paddlers get a bad rap for the pollution, and people don't realize that it's actually not, for, I would say 99% of the time, it is not the paddlers that are leaving the trash. It is runoff from highways, and all that stuff is just coming down. And so that's been a user conflict issue that I've come across on the Broad River, just because we've got all the UGA students, you know, and they get raucous and whatever. So now we've had to establish a connection, and we have in the past, but I think even more so with all the outfitters, that there has to be cleanups that go on. And then also reaching out to some of the users, like fraternities and sororities who are bringing these big groups, that they also are going to be doing cleanups. So there's a way to work with outfitters and, you know, come to a happy medium, and also understand really what is the root of whatever issue may be coming up between an outfitter and a steward. You know, there's outfitters that have banned use of any plastic, or, you know, there's different things. In Florida, on some of the state parks, you cannot bring anything in a wrapper, like anything on the Ichituckney. So, you know, there's different ways that communities have dealt with some of these issues. But that's just a few examples to put out there.
Yeah, those are some great examples. Our next question is from Micah, and they say, also, okay, it looks like there's two parts to this question, but they just overall wanted to say, you know, awesome work. They've been floating Peachtree Creek, South Fork, near their home, and they're looking to have a kayak launch near the Confluence in town Atlanta. The first question is, are y'all looking at more urban waterways? And then the second is, what were lessons learned in Augusta?
Okay. Yeah. So I think that, right, you know, the urban waterway really at this point has taken off, and of course Columbus with their big whitewater park. And so that's kind of like the theme that some of these cities have taken, where, you know, they're like, well, we really want it to be a big moneymaker. And they're using the example of Columbus. I know there was also talk with Metro Atlanta on the Yellow River of maybe doing some kind of whitewater park thing. There's even been a little bit of rumbling in some of the other cities like Augusta. And so, you know, I know that there's that economic benefit piece, especially in these urban areas. But, you know, I think really the sky is the limit. I mean, you can put as much access, you know, needed access, of course, as you possibly can, if you can get a bona fide together and the support that you need. So really my role is not to go out and like try to find places to put water trails. What I do is I motivate people to get excited about them, to rally their community, get an awesome stakeholder group together, and then I can come in and I can help. But I can't do it by myself. I have to have local, you know, I don't know everything in the state. So, you know, I think that local support is the main thing in terms of getting any access anywhere, no matter urban or elsewhere. We have focused a lot more, or not even focused more, but just we've had requests a lot from more rural areas. And a part of that is because I work closely with the Explore Georgia economic development, product development team. And so I work with communities, and they do a lot of rural community work. And so I'll go and work with these groups. So I hope I answered your question in terms of urban. The Augusta Canal, you know, they're in lawsuits and trying to figure all that, a way to portage around and get the fish weir in and make sure that, you know, all these different user groups are happy. But, you know, it's a short trail, it's a canal, it's right next to the Savannah River. And I like to paddle both. And I've been encouraging them, Tanya, the Savannah River Keeper, for years to, you know, let's get a water trail going on the Savannah too. But, you know, they've been in lawsuits. They have so many things they're dealing with that it hasn't been top priority. So I'm working on it, but it's just how it is. So, but yeah, the Augusta Canal, it's something that we were going to paddle actually for the Georgia Trail Summit coming up, and then we're not doing it. It's virtual now, but yeah, it's a beautiful spot to go. I don't know if there's a specific question about the Augusta Canal, but.
Great. We have another question from Elena. She asked, are there any plans or interested people for creating a Oconee River water trail? The part from Clarksville to Chattahoochee River looks navigable for kayaks.
Oh boy. Yes, you're kind of stepping in a little bit of a bag of worms. So the Sequoia is, it's a little bit tricky because it's a very popular spot for fly fishermen. And so again, there's been this user conflict dynamic in the past. And so we've had to kind of be very cautious moving forward and making sure that the time is right to come to the community and to build this water trail. And when I say come to the community, I mean basically, you know, I have shown interest. In fact, we did a Sequoia River Hidden Gem paddling trip a couple of years ago, and we did paddle, and it was amazing. It was beautiful, and to me, it would be an amazing water trail. But again, there are these user conflict issues with these fly fishermen that really don't want these paddlers disturbing their fish. The similar situation happened on the Chattooga. And so there's just been kind of this back and forth. And so it's a sticky situation, but I think the other piece about it is that there's only so far that you can go before you start hitting these little dam blocks. And there's really not adequate portage around it. It's private property. And so you would have to get the blessing of the private property owner in order to get the portage around. So there's just a lot of little things that need to be worked out with the Sequoia, but I support it. I would love to paddle that river more. It is just enchanting. So go for it.
Sorry for pronouncing it wrong, by the way. I've never actually heard it pronounced. So I've been saying Soke, and that's clearly wrong. So, we had a couple responses to the camping question, just following back up on that. Tina said that Dub Denman has overnight camping in Georgia and Alabama to the lake, and then there are hammocks in the Okefenokee. And then Gretchen says that the Walls Watershed Coalition is working on a campsite at the Withlacoochee and Little River confluence, and they have a very active group of holders.
Go Gretchen! I love Gretchen.
Exciting. Yeah. And then one more thing from Tina. She said that she loves the Broad River. It was one of her first canoe trips as a family. She said, we probably went to your dad's place and asked if you had camping there.
There is camping at the outpost, but it's not like I guess it is considered the river. I mean, there are like various little camping nooks, you know. I mean, there's even some islands that people camp on that are like in the middle of the river. And, you know, I can't give someone permission to go do that. You know, when they ask me, I'm like, you can do it at your own risk kind of thing. But yeah, there's little spots everywhere, but they're not, most of the time they're either private, you know, owned by an outfitter or some kind of private entity, not like state campgrounds that are along the river like you see in Florida that are like well maintained.
So I'm going to go over to the chat now to see, you know, if there were any questions in here. And we have one from Vicky, and she says that there is already a map of the extension of Blue Trail that I want to make official. A lot of the original work is done. What would be the next steps in making the extension official?
Okay, is this Vicky with, who is Vicky with?
Vicky, if you wouldn't mind sending that in the chat.
Yeah, if you're able to put that in the chat, then we will know.
Because that'll help me like figure out where, how, what. I mean, generally speaking, if you already have an established water trail, then you can continue to build it and you'll still be considered established. It's not like you know, that won't change anything in terms of the designation. So, you know, just adding to the map, you know, that obviously you're going to have to redo your maps to add any additional access or amenities along the way. But yeah, I mean, I would say what I can do is support you guys by helping to publish the edition of any access and getting that word out around the state to different recreational users. And then, of course, we'll need to update our maps, but I still don't know what trails.
They're in Wisconsin County Parks.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
I don't know if the Georgia laws, the Georgia applies that. But yeah, for Georgia, that's our situation. I don't, I need to look back and see if Wisconsin, they probably do have a state program. They have so much water, but not sure.
If we missed any of the questions in the chat, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any more because I believe that a few of you guys put yours in the Q&A. If we have any more Q&A questions, please feel free to submit those. Tina wanted to specify on her camping question saying, did your place have camping when you're talking about your father's place?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have a little campground there for groups and whatnot. Sure do. I was trying to see if there was anything else I noticed on the side thing there. So also I should just mention too, for those folks that are, adopt-a-streamers and recreational users as well, that we do have our Georgia River Network is really well known for Paddle Georgia, which we had to do virtual this year, but it is what it is. But Adopt-a-Stream always comes along and does an amazing job taking water quality samples along the way. And it's a great way to learn while you're out recreating how to become a monitorer. And so we do have some, of course, trips will be next year with Adopt-a-Stream, but we do have some other trips coming up that are social distance paddles. So please join us and check our website out. We're all about education and, our underlying motive, even though we want economic development and we want people to get out there and recreate, our underlying motive is a clean, healthy river. We really, truly are those like river huggers at heart. And so, sometimes you have to use different angles to convince folks that aren't river lovers, that don't know, they haven't been out there. And, there's so many representatives in our communities that I feel like they need to be taken on a paddle down the river. They need to see that river in their backyard. And if you have an opportunity to do that, that can be one of the most convincing ways to get leadership to get a water trail being, developed in their community. So I would highly recommend that.
Awesome. It looks like we have one last question, and then I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Elvin wanted to know if there's what is the fee for 6 months of assistance?
Oh, it kind of depends on, it's like a sliding scale, but generally speaking, it's $2,500 for 6 months and then $5,000 for a year. And then I'll do facilitate monthly meetings with the group. And so that's kind of how the structure is right now.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gwyneth. That was a whole lot of amazing information jam-packed into an hour. So we thank you so much for being here. And we'll go ahead and wrap up. We just have a few closing remarks and reminders. So if you have not already, please join our Confluence 2020 Facebook group to keep up to date on upcoming sessions and connect with fellow conference attendees. Additionally, if you don't already, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and keep up with the latest goings on with Adopt-a-Stream. There are only a few sessions left, actually. We're in our last week, but we really want you guys to show up for our last week of sessions. So please check out our upcoming sessions page, our session registration page, on our website to sign up for some of those sessions. Additionally, if you're not able to join a session that was really interesting to you, they will all be recorded and posted onto our resources and recordings page, also on our website and on our YouTube channel.
Yes, and we have a few more days left of our silent auction. So you have until the end of the month to place your bids, and there's a whole variety of items posted on there. The link to the site is in our chat and on our website. And then at the end of the session, you will be directed to a just brief 5-question survey. If you have the time to complete it, we'd really appreciate your feedback to let us know what we can do to improve, especially on this virtual format. And if you have any questions or, would like to know more information, maybe from Gwyneth or something, then you can email us and we can be able to connect you both. And if you just have any questions about Adopt a Stream, the email is in the chat too. So thank you everyone for coming today.
Thank you so much.